A blind knight in his 60s married a young bride. He called it paradise. One day she said she wanted a pear. So he bent down and became her footstool. She climbed the tree. And suddenly his sight came back. He looked up. He saw everything. She smiled and said, "I was healing your eyes." He saw the truth and chose to believe her. Welcome to the merchant's tale. So the merchant begins his tale, and honestly, the man is absolutely miserable. He sighs and says, weeping and wailing, sorrow and care. I have enough of that to last me morning, noon, and night. He looks around the group and tells them that he has a wife and she is the absolute worst. He claims that if she were married to the devil himself, she would outmatch him before breakfast. She is a shrew in every possible way. He tells them there is a vast ocean of difference between Griselde's legendary patience and his wife's extreme cruelty. He swears that if he were single again, he would never, ever fall into that snare. He says, we wedded men live in sorrow and care. Try it yourself and you'll find out I'm telling the gospel truth. But the host interrupts him with a wave of his hand. He says, merchant, since you know so much about that particular art, please share a part of it with us. The merchant agrees, though he hangs his head. He says he is too sad to tell his own story, so instead he offers another one. Once upon a time in the fertile lands of Lombardy, there lived a worthy knight. He was born in Pavia and lived in great prosperity. For 40 years this man was single, spending all that time chasing his bodily delights and pursuing women whenever he felt the appetite, just as a layperson might. But when he passed 60 years of age, something changed. Maybe it was a sudden burst of holiness, or maybe it was just old age foolishness. I can't say, but this knight got such a great courage to be a wedded man. Day and night he did all he could to spy out where he might get married. He prayed to our Lord to grant him that blissful life that exists between a husband and his wife. He said, no other life is worth a bean. Wedlock is so easy and so clean, it's like a paradise on earth. That is what this old knight said. And to think people supposed he was wise. He thought that taking a wife was a glorious thing, especially when a man is old and gray. Then he reasoned, a wife is the fruit of his treasure. He decided he should take a young wife, a fair one. Someone to give him an heir. He wanted to lead his life in joy and solace, unlike those miserable bachelors who sing, alas, whenever they find adversity in love. He truly believed that wedded men live a life of bliss and order, bound pleasantly under the yoke of marriage. He thought, who can be so obedient as a wife, who is so true? Who cares for him when he is sick and whole? She will never forsake him. She will love and serve him until he dies. Now, some writers say it isn't so. Theophrastus is one of them. He warned, take no wife for the sake of thrift. A true servant will take better care of your goods than your own wife. She will claim half of everything for her whole life. But this knight, his name was January, didn't care about that. He said, defy Theophrastus and listen to me. He believed a woman is made for man's help, just as Eve was made for Adam. He thought a wife would be so obedient and virtuous that they would have to live in unity, one flesh, one blood, one heart. So January called his friends together and told them his intent. He said, friends, I am gray and old, and almost, God knows, on the brink of my grave. I have spent my body foolishly, but now I will amend it. I am going to be a wedded man, and I'm going to do it in a hurry. I need a maiden fair and tender of age. I pray you, help me arrange my marriage. But he gave them a stern warning. He said, I will have no old wife. She certainly won't pass 16 years. I would rather have old fish and young flesh. Better a pike than a pickerel, and better than old beef is tender veal. I want no woman 30 years of age. That is nothing but bean straw and coarse forage. Old widows know too much of the craft on Wade's boat. They can do too much harm when they want to. I could never live in rest with them. He smirked and added, a young thing a man can guide. Just like you can mold warm wax with your hands. His friends started arguing. Some praised marriage, some blamed it. There were two brothers there. One was called Placebo, and the other was Justinus. Placebo, ever the flatterer, said, "O January, brother, you are so full of wisdom you don't need counsel, but I agree with you. I have been a courtier all my life. I have stood before lords of high estate, and I never contradicted them. A counselor is a fool if he thinks his counsel passes his lord's wit. You have shown high judgment. I hold your opinion to be the absolute best." Justinus, on the other hand, sat still and listened with a skeptic's eye. Then he answered. He said, "Now, brother mine, be patient. Seneca says a man ought to consider well to whom he gives his land or his cattle. And since I ought to consider well to whom I give my goods, I certainly ought to consider to whom I give my body. It is no child's play to take a wife. You must inquire if she is wise or sober or a drunkard, or proud or a scold or a waster. No one is perfect, but she needs to have more good qualities than bad." Justinus went on, his voice low and serious. "I have wept many a tear secretly since I have had a wife. Praise the wedded life all you want, but I find in it only cost and care. And my neighbors say I have the most steadfast wife around. But I know best where my own shoe pinches. You are a man of age, and you want a young, fair wife. Trust me, you won't please her for even 3 years. A wife requires many attentions." January was not happy. He snapped, "Straw for your Seneca, and straw for your Proverbs. Wiser men than you have agreed with me. Placebo, what say you?" Placebo grinned and said, "I say he is a cursed man that hinders matrimony." And with that word they all stood up. It was decided. January would be wedded when he pleased and where he wanted. High fantasy and curious business started to imprint on January's soul regarding his marriage. Many fair shapes and many fair faces passed through his heart night after night, just like someone holding a mirror in a marketplace, seeing figures pace by. He thought of maidens who lived nearby. He debated with himself. If one had beauty, maybe another had the people's favor for her seriousness and kindness. Others were rich but had a bad reputation, but finally he decided on one. He let all the others go from his heart and chose her on his own authority. For love is blind and cannot see. When he was in bed, he portrayed her in his heart, her fresh beauty, her tender age, her small waist, her long, slender arms, her wise governance, and her gentle demeanor. He decided his choice could not be improved upon. He thought every other man's wit was so bad that it would be impossible to argue against his choice. This was his fantasy, so he called his friends back. He asked them not to make any arguments against his purpose. He said there was a maiden in town. She was of low degree, but her youth and beauty were enough for him. He only had one worry. He said, "I have heard that no man can have 2 perfect blisses, one on earth and one in heaven. There is so much ease and pleasure in marriage that I am afraid. I am afraid I will lead such a merry life without woe or strife that I shall have my heaven here on earth. And since heaven is bought so dearly with tribulation, how can I keep this joy and still go to heaven?" Justinus, who hated this folly, answered with a dry joke. He said, "Sir, if there are no other obstacles, God might just work a miracle for you. Before you have your rites of Holy Church, you might repent of the wedded life. She might be your purgatory, she might be God's whip. And then your soul shall skip up to heaven swifter than an arrow from a bow." So they made the arrangements. The maiden's name was May. She was as hasty as she could be to wed this January. The day came. They went to the church to receive the holy sacrament. The priest came forth with his stole around his neck. He told her to be like Sarah and Rebecca, said his prayers, and made the sign of the cross over them. Thus they were wedded with solemnity. They sat at the feast, filled with joy and bliss. The palace was full of instruments and delicious food. But at that feast there was a squire. His name was Damien. He carved the meat before the night, and he was so ravished by the Lady May that he almost went mad. He almost fainted where he stood. Venus had hurt him so sorely with her brand. He went to his bed hastily. He wept and complained. "O perilous fire that breeds in the bed straw! O domestic enemy! O traitor servant!" January was drunk on the pleasure of marriage. He looked at his fresh May and thought to himself, "Alas, O tender creature! God grant that you can endure my courage, it is so sharp and keen. I am afraid you cannot sustain it, but God forbid that I should use all my might." He wished the guests would leave. Finally they did. They drank their spiced wine and went home. January drank hippocras and clar and strong wines with hot spices to increase his courage. He ate many potions, the kind written about by the cursed monk Dan Constantine in his book on intercourse. He told his friends to clear the house. They drew the curtains. The bride was brought to bed, as still as a stone. The priest blessed the bed and everyone left. January took his fresh May, his paradise, into his arms. He lulled her, he kissed her. The thick bristles of his beard were unsoft, like the skin of a dogfish, sharp as a briar. He rubbed her tender face. He said, "Alas, I must trespass against you, my spouse. But consider this, no workman can work both well and hastily. This will be done at leisure perfectly." And so he labored until the day began to dawn. Then he took a piece of bread soaked in wine. He sat up in his bed and sang loud and clear. He kissed his wife. He was all coltish and full of chatter like a magpie. The slack skin on his neck shook while he sang, but God only knows what May thought in her heart when she saw him sitting up in his shirt, in his nightcap, with his lean neck. She didn't praise his playing worth a bean. Now let's speak of woeful Damien. He was languishing for love. He wrote a letter, a complaint, a song to his fair lady May. He put it in a silk purse and hung it inside his shirt, right at his heart. 4 days passed. May stayed in her chamber, as was the custom. On the 4th day, January was sitting in the hall, and he remembered Damien. He said, "Saint Mary, how can this be? Why isn't Damien attending to me? Is he sick?" His squires told him that Damien was indeed sick. January said, "That grieves me. He is a gentle squire. If he died, it would be a great harm. He is wise, discreet, and secretive. After meat I will visit him myself, and May will come too." He told May, "Dame, after meat, you and all your women go see Damien. Cheer him up, he is a gentleman." So May went straight to Damien. She sat down by his bedside. She comforted him. Damien saw his chance. Secretly, he took his purse with the letter in it and put it into her hand. He squeezed her hand hard and whispered, "Mercy, don't discover me. I am dead if this thing becomes known." May hid the purse in her bosom and went her way. She went back to January, who sat on his bed. He pulled her close and kissed her often. When she finally got a moment alone, she read the letter. Then she tore it into fragments and cast it into the privy. Who is thoughtful now but fair fresh May? She lay down by old January. He slept until his cough woke him up. He asked her to strip all naked. He wanted some pleasure. She obeyed him whether she wanted to or not. "But lest precious folk be angry with me, I dare not tell you exactly how he wrought, or whether she thought it was paradise or hell. But here is the truth." May felt such pity for sick Damien. She decided she would grant him her grace. She didn't care who it displeased. She assured herself she would love him best of any creature, even if he had nothing but his shirt. "See how excellent generosity is in women," she wrote a letter. She told him she would grant his desire. She just needed a time and a place. The next time she visited him, she subtly thrust the letter under his pillow. She took his hand and squeezed it so no one would know. She told him to get well. Up rose Damien the next morning. His sickness and sorrow were gone. He combed his hair, he pruned himself. He did everything his lady liked, and he was as humble to January as a dog with a bow. Now January insisted on living deliciously. He had a garden walled all with stone. It was so fair that I don't think even the author of the Romance of the Rose could describe its beauty. Priapus, the god of gardens, couldn't describe the beauty of it, or the well that stood under a laurel tree. It was said that Pluto, the king of fairy, and his queen Proserpina often danced around that well. January loved this garden so much that he allowed no one to have the key but himself. He carried a silver cricket, a key, and he unlocked it whenever he pleased. In the summer he would go there with May and no one else. Things that were not done in bed, he performed in the garden. But worldly joy doesn't last. Oh sudden mishap, oh unstable fortune. Like the scorpion so deceitful that flatters with its head when it wants to sting, but its tail is death. Why have you deceived January? Alas, this noble January amidst his lust and prosperity went blind. All suddenly he wept and wailed piteously, and the fire of jealousy burned his heart. He was so afraid his wife would fall into folly that he wished they were both dead. He didn't want her to be a wife or a widow to anyone else. He wanted her to wear black clothes and be solitary like a turtle dove that has lost its mate. Finally, after a month or two, his sorrow calmed down. But he could not let go of his jealousy. It was outrageous. He wouldn't let her ride or walk anywhere unless he had his hand on her always. Freshme wept often. She loved Damien so burningly that she thought she would die. She waited for her heart to burst, and Damien was the sorrowfulest man that ever was. He couldn't speak a word to May about his purpose unless January heard it. For January always had a hand on her, but by writing back and forth and by secret signs, Damien knew what she meant. And she knew his intent. Oh January, what good is it to you if you can see as far as ships sail? It is as good to be blind and deceived as it is to see and be deceived. Freshme took warm wax and imprinted the key that January carried. Damien, who knew her intent, counterfeited the key secretly. Now, on a day in July, January got a great urge to play in his garden with his wife. He said, "Rise up, my wife, my love, my lady free. The winter is gone with all its wet rains. Come forth with your eyes like the doves. The garden is enclosed. Come forth, my white spouse. I chose you for my wife and my comfort." May made a sign to Damien. He went in before them with his key. He opened the wicket gate, rushed in, and sat still under a bush. January, blind as a stone, came in with May. He grabbed her hand and shut the gate. "Now, wife," he said, "here is no one but you and I. You are the creature I love best. I would rather die on a knife than offend you. Think of how I chose you. Not for covetousness, but for love. Be true to me. And though I am jealous, don't blame me. You are so deep in my thoughts, and I am so old and unlikely that I cannot bear to be out of your company," May answered benignly. But first she began to weep. "I have," she said, "a soul to keep as well as you. In my honor, I pray to God that I die a shameful death if I am ever false to you. If I do that fault, strip me and put me in a sack and drown me in the nearest river. I am a gentlewoman, not a wench." And with that word she saw where Damien sat in the bush. She coughed, and with her finger she made a sign that Damien should climb up a tree. A tree charged with fruit. Up he went. He understood her perfectly. Now bright was the day. Down in the garden on the farther side sat Pluto, the king of fairy. And many ladies were with him, following his wife, Queen Proserpina. Pluto sat down on a bank of fresh green turf, and he said to his queen, "My wife," he said, "no one can deny the treason that women do to men. 100,000 stories tell of your untruth and fickleness. Solomon, the richest and wisest of all, said, 'Among 1,000 men I found one, but of all women I found never one.' He knew your wickedness." Pluto continued, "Do you see this honorable knight? Because he is blind and old, his own man is going to make him a cuckold. Look where the lecher sits in the tree. Now I will grant this old blind knight his sight back. The moment his wife does him villainy, he shall see it. Then her harlotry will be known." "Yes, sir," said Proserpina, raising an eyebrow. "Is that what you're going to do? Now, by my mother Ceres' soul, I swear I will give her a sufficient answer. And all women after her for her sake, even if they are caught in any guilt, they shall excuse themselves with a bold face. They will shout down the men who accuse them." She went on, "So what if Solomon said he found no good woman? That man forsook the true God in his old age. He was a lecher and an idolater. I don't care about your authorities. I am a woman, I must speak. I will not spare him." "Dame," said Pluto, "be no longer angry. I give up, but since I swore my oath that I would grant him his sight again, I will stick to my word." I am a king, it doesn't befit me to lie, and I, said she, am the queen of fairy. She shall have her answer, let's not talk about it any more. Now let us turn again to January. He was singing merrier than a parrot in the garden. I love you best and no one else. He roamed down the alleys until he came to that same pear tree. The one where Damien sat up high among the fresh green leaves. Fresh May, so bright and shining, began to sigh. Alas, my side, she said. Sir, whatever happens, I must have one of those pears that I see. Or I must die, I long for them so much. I tell you, a woman in my plight can have such a great appetite for fruit that she might die if she doesn't get it. Alas, said January. I wish I had a servant here who could climb. Alas, alas, I am blind. Yes, sir, no matter, said she. But if you would vouchsafe, for God's sake, to hug the pear tree in your arms. I know you mistrust me, but then I could climb up well enough if I could set my foot on your back. Certainly, said he. I would help you with my heart's blood. He stooped down. She stood on his back, she caught a branch, and up she went. Ladies, please don't be angry, I can't mince words. I am a rude man. Suddenly Damien pulled up her smock. And in he rushed, and when Pluto saw this great wrong, he gave January his sight back. He made him see as well as he ever could, and when January caught his sight again, never was a man so happy. But his thoughts were on his wife. He cast his eyes up to the tree. And he saw how Damien had addressed his wife, in such a manner that I cannot express it, unless I speak discourteously. He gave a roaring cry, like a mother when her child dies. Out help, alas, Harrow, he cried. O strong Lady Store, what are you doing? And she answered with supreme confidence. Sir, what ails you? Have patience and reason in your mind. I have helped you with your 2 blind eyes. On peril of my soul I shall not lie. I was taught that to heal your eyes, nothing was better than for me to struggle with a man in a tree. God knows I did it with good intent. Struggle, shouted January. Yea, it went deep in. God give you both a shameful death. He swived you, I saw it with my eyes, or else may I be hanged by the neck. Then, said she, my medicine was all false. For certainly, if you could see, you wouldn't say those words to me. You have some glimpsing but no perfect sight. I see, said he, as well as ever I did. Thank God, and by my faith I thought he did that to you. You are confused, good sir, you are confused, said she, shaking her head. Is this the thanks I get for making you see? Alas, that I was ever so kind. Now, dame, said he, rubbing his eyes, let it pass out of mind. Come down, my love, if I have misspoken, God help me, I am sorry. But by my father's soul, I thought I saw Damien lay by you. And that your smock lay upon his breast. Yea, sir, said she, you may think as you please. But sir, a man who wakes out of his sleep, he can't suddenly notice things perfectly. Not until he is truly awakened. Just so, a man who has been blind for a long time cannot suddenly see well when his sight first comes back. Until your sight is established for a while, many sights may beguile you. Beware, I pray you, many a man thinks he sees a thing and it is entirely different than it seems. And with that word, she leaped down from the tree. This January, who is glad but he kissed her and embraced her often. He stroked her softly on her stomach, and he led her home to his palace. Now, good men, I pray you to be glad. Thus ends my tale of January. God bless us and his mother, Saint Mary. And thus the merchant finishes his bitter tale, leaving January happy in his ignorance and May triumphant in her deceit. It is a complicated ending for a complicated world, where sometimes peace is purchased with a lie. I hope you found value in this medieval drama. If you did, please leave a like to support our campfire. I have many more tales from the road to Canterbury to share, so subscribe now, and I will see you all in the next story.